Going through this. So here today, don't write a blank check to the nursing home. So what we're talking about is the nursing home, because most people, if they go to a nursing home, the nursing home wipes them out. So what's the risk about you going to the nursing home? I hope nobody goes to the nursing home, but unfortunately, as we're living longer and longer and longer, nursing home care becomes more prevalent. So about 70% over 65 are going to require some type of long-term care. Over 40% will need care in a nursing home, and 20% of 65-year-olds will need care over 5 years. Now, obviously, as you grow older, that percentage is going to increase as well. So just right at this moment in time, 1 in 5 of us is going to need care for over 5 years. So there's a whole bunch of myths out there. It's illegal to give money away. My spouse will lose our home. I will lose everything. I must spend all my assets on the nursing home. There's nothing I can do. This is a lot of times what we hear. Okay, I'm just going to write a check to the nursing home and that's it, because I have to give everything to the nursing home because they're in a nursing home or just about to go into a nursing home. And there's this thing about a 5-year look back, so I'm too late. All of those are just absolute baloney. So there is things that you can do, either what we call pre-crisis or in a crisis situation. So we'll talk about that. So the myth is I must give everything to the nursing home. Here's a blank check, okay? And just bill off of it. Here's my $200,000 or whatever. And once all that money is gone, we'll go on Medicaid. That is not correct. The average stay in a nursing home is about 4 years. The average cost of a nursing home in this area is over $12,000. There's some facilities here are charging $15,000 to $16,000. So 4 years at 12 months times 12,000 is over $500,000. For most people I see, that will wipe everybody out. So the other myth is that Medicare is going to pay for long-term care. Medicare does not pay for long-term care. Medicare will pay for rehabilitation. So the only way that you'll get that is that you can't just knock on the nursing home door and come in. Basically, what happens is that you've got a slip, trip, or fall, or for some reason you end up going into the hospital. You have 3 overnights in the hospital. You're then transferred from the hospital to a nursing home for rehabilitation. Medicare will then pick that up. So you've got to be also careful with going to the hospital, because sometimes the hospitals and nursing homes play tricks. So if you're just going to the hospital, even though that you're over there for if you're in there for 4 or 5 days, if you're only there for under observation and then you transfer to the nursing home, you haven't reached that 3 overnights because you were under observation. You have got to be admitted. It doesn't make sense because you go to the emergency room, you go up to floor number 2, you would think that you have been admitted, but you might just be under observation. If you're under observation, Medicare will not cover you because you haven't met the 3 overnight admitted stay. So if you have 3 overnights, you're admitted, you go to the nursing home, Medicare will cover the first 20 days, 100%. Then from 21 to 100, you're on a copay. So Medicare roughly pays about 80%, and then the other 20% is out of pocket, unless you have supplemental insurance. Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Aetna, those type of supplemental, they'll pick up. You're not guaranteed the 100 days, but basically they're saying that you've got to be getting better, or after 45 days that you decide that you don't want to do the physical therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy, or whatever, then if you're not performing or you want to stop that, then Medicare will stop. And if Medicare stops, so does your supplemental insurance. So that's really covered under Medicare Part A. Medicare Part B, obviously, is outpatient services, doctors, therapists, and Medicare Part D that most people are aware of, for prescription drugs. Your MediGap supplemental insurance will not cover what we call custodial care. It doesn't pay for long-term care. It will only pay for rehab, and it will only pay if Medicare is paying. So if Medicare pays 45 days, your MediGap insurance will cover up to the 45 days. But if Medicare stops, so does your supplemental insurance, okay? And then if you're in the nursing home up to 100 days, then obviously Medicare will stop, and so will your MediGap, your supplemental insurance. Let me just repeat, because a lot of people think that Medicare and your supplemental insurance will pay for long-term care, custodial care. They do not. So, another myth is I can't transfer certain assets to avoid Medicaid. Well, that's another one, because people, as I mentioned earlier, that people were thinking, well, and there's something about this 5 years, my loved one's in the nursing home, I can't do anything. As I say, that's a myth. You can do things within a 5-year look-back period. You can do things even if your loved one or you are actually in the nursing home. You've got to be careful how you transfer your assets, though. It's not like, oh, I'm going into the nursing home tomorrow and I've got $100,000 and I'm just going to write a $100,000 check to the nursing home, because then, I'm sorry, not the nursing home, but I'm going to give it to my children or whatever, because that's going to cause what we call penalty periods. So for every approximately $10,000 in Maryland that you give away, that creates 1 month of ineligibility within that 5 years. So let's say that you have that 100,000, you give it away the day before you go in, or 3 years before you go in, but within that 5-year look-back period, then what happens? You go into the nursing home, you apply for Medicaid, you're sick, you're in the nursing home, and you have zero assets because you gave away that 100,000. So your assets are below the 2,500. So Medicaid goes back 5 years, sees that you've given away $100,000. They divide that $100,000 by approximately $10,000, which they say is the average cost of a nursing home in Maryland. And that creates a 10-month penalty period. So because you gave that money away. So you don't have any money. You've only got Social Security, pension, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $6,000. If the nursing home private cost is $15,000, then there's a shortfall. And then, the issue would be is who's responsible for that? Well, we sort of talked about a little bit yesterday, but, with the nursing home contract, if you sign it as the guarantor, then if the person in the nursing home can't pay it and you sign it as a guarantor, you're on the hook for that money. However, if you sign it as a power of attorney, you're just working as an agent for that person. You're not responsible. So you've got to be very, very careful how you sign all these contracts, okay? Now, it can give some money to, say, your children, but what happens if they file for bankruptcy, foreclosure? What happens if they go into the nursing home? What happens if they die and they have a will and that money goes to your daughter-in-law and son-in-law? Because then that money will definitely disappear, because if you give money, say, to your children for that $100,000 and you go into a nursing home, that child could give that $100,000 back. So there's no harm, no foul, okay? So you've got to be very careful of what you do. And a lot of people, say, well, I'm going to put my son's name on my account or my daughter's name on the house. and that's going to protect us from Medicaid. That's not the case, okay? Okay, so potential nursing home assets. Basically everything. Everything that you own is a potential nursing home. So if you've got any bank accounts, checking, savings, CDs, money markets, if you've got a portfolio with a financial advisor with stocks, bonds, commodities, options, any properties that you have. And what we talked about yesterday was if you had a revocable trust, because you can get at your assets in the revocable trust, so can the nursing home and Medicaid. So a revocable trust does not protect your assets. As I mentioned, joint accounts, by just adding your child's name to the bank account does not protect those assets. Now, if you have a joint account and your child gave you $50,000, that child can then go in and take that $50,000 out because technically that was theirs. But if it's a $50,000 joint account and it's basically all your money, not your kid's money, then that's an asset. Any life insurance, basically greater than $1,500. I don't know if anybody has life insurance under $1,500. I don't think that can buy a loaf of bread these days. Not so much, it's not going to be any, there's two types of insurance that basically Medicaid sort of looks at, and one is term life insurance. Term life insurance has no value until you die. So, Medicaid in Maryland doesn't recognize that. It would be really whole life. So if you have a $50,000 whole life policy, you get $50,000 when you die, but you can cash that out for $15,000 today. They will count those $15,000 as an asset. Likewise, in Maryland, any retirement accounts. So if my wife's in the going into the nursing home and I have an IRA of $50,000, obviously the IRA is in my name. However, that is a countable asset because in Maryland, they pull everything together. So whether it's joint, whether it's in my name, or in my wife's name, who's going to go into the nursing home, it's all pulled together. Vehicles as well. As we'll find out, there's a difference between a single person and a married couple. And likewise, a potential nursing home asset is your home as well. Okay, so when you look at it, potential nursing home assets is everything that you own. So if we're talking about an exemption of assets for a single person, basically that person is allowed to keep up to $2,500. That's not income, that's assets. So if you have $100,000 in a checking account, that has to get spent down below $2,500. So 10 months at 10 grand, you've got nothing left. Exempt assets for a single person, limited personal property. If you can, you might be able to have a TV, a chair, and whatever you can fit in your nursing home, room. You can keep a piece of jewelry. You can maybe keep your engagement ring, wedding ring, or whatever. You're also allowed to prepay your funeral as long as it's an irrevocable contract. So if you go to the nursing home and you hand over $10,000 for your funeral, it's got to be irrevocable. If you go to the funeral home to prepay, just say you're trying to do this for Medicaid purposes to avoid paying the nursing home, they should know what to do. You're also allowed a burial plot. And all of your income is going to go to the nursing home because that's to offset the cost, except for roughly about $84 a month. I don't know what you can do with $84, but if you go down to Charlestown and double it and double it and double it, be careful that you don't have more than $2,500 because you'll lose your Medicaid. Okay. As a single person, everything else is a nursing home asset. You don't really see the house here. They can't force you to sell your home, but what they're going to do is place liens against the home. So if you're on Medicaid and you're in there for 4 years, that's $500,000. And if your house is worth $400,000, there's a $500,000 lien on that property, and Maryland will just scoop it up. Okay, so as a single person, unless you do planning, for most people, if they have a house, the $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 or whatever, it's gone. Obviously, if you have long-term care insurance or something along those lines, then depending on your daily rate, so if you have $200 a day times $300, that's $6,000 a month. That's not going to cover the nursing home, because the nursing home is, say, $12,000. You've got $6,000 long-term care insurance. You've got $2,000 as pension, Social Security, etc. You're still $4,000 in the hole. So you'd have to pay that, depending on what you want to do. Okay. So as I say, here's a single personal example. You've got a home of $250,000. You've got a car, $100,000 IRA, $50,000 savings account, $10,000 checking account. Your total countable assets as a single person is $420,000. So your assets are $420,000. You're basically only allowed to keep $2,500. So basically, the amount of assets potentially going to the nursing home is over $400,000 unless you do any planning. Because as I say, they'll come after your assets. You got to spend it down under $2,500, except for the home. However, they will place liens against the home, and if you're in there for a long time, then that home is going to disappear too. So it's pretty bleak, unless you plan as a single person. Now we're talking about married couple. So the married couple, what are exempt assets for a married couple? Well, as long as what we call the community spouse is still living in the marital home, that home is exempt. Okay, it's a non-countable asset. Now, what we want to do is, if it's owned by husband and wife or joint, we want to take the institutional name off of that deed, just to leave it to the community spouse. So with the community spouse, if they sell it to downsize, then they keep the money. You're also allowed to keep one vehicle. Okay, so obviously what I feel is that they want to give the community spouse one vehicle so they can drive up to the nursing home and take care of their loved one. And also you can prepay your funeral and burial plot, like personal property, i.e. your personal property, what's in the home. And then basically you're allowed to keep half of your assets up to $130,000. So what do I mean by that? So let's say you have $80,000 and that's your combined assets that are joint, owned by husband and wife. Then Maryland will split that by 2. So out of the 80,000, the institutional spouse, nursing home spouse gets 40, and the community spouse gets 40. Now the community spouse can keep their 40,000. However, that $40,000 has to be spent down below $2,500 to get on Medicaid. So 4 months at 10 grand, there's 40,000. It disappears, and then the community spouse keeps their 40,000. Now, if you have, say, 400,000, they divide that by 2. So the community spouse gets 200,000. The institutional spouse gets 200. However, Maryland comes over to the community spouse and it says, wow, you've got 200,000. You've got far too much money. you're only allowed to keep up to approximately $130,000. So the 70,000 between the 200 and the 130, 70,000, that goes over to the institutional spouse. So the institutional spouse has now their 200 plus the community spouse is 70,000. So now they have $270,000, and that has to get spent down. Okay. So, unless you've got a home, a vehicle, you've got half of your property, your assets, everything else potentially goes to the nursing home. Okay. So once again, I'll give you a little example. Husband and wife, they have a home, 250. They've got a car, 10,000. Checking account, 50,000. Husband has an IRA of 150,000. Wife has an IRA of 100,000. So countable assets is the husband's IRA, the wife's IRA, and the checking accounts of 50,000. Because if we go back up here, we're not including the home. Since this is a married couple, the home is exempt. And likewise is the car. But everything else, the checking, the IRA, well, the two IRAs are countable assets. So your total countable assets are $300,000. So out of the $300,000, we divide it by 2. That's $150,000 for the community spouse and $150,000 for the institutional spouse. However, the ceiling is approximately $130,000 for the community spouse. So the community spouse only gets $130,000, and the other $20,000 goes over to the institutional spouse. So the community spouse gets $130,000, and the $170,000 has to get spent down below $2,500, as we can see here. Community spouse keeps $130,000. The nursing home spouse has $170,000. The nursing home spend down $170,000 to qualify for Medicaid. That $170,000 has to get spent down to $2,500. Okay, so that's what usually happens. So why are we on this call? Because obviously we don't want to write a blank check to the nursing home. There is ways, let me reiterate that, there is ways that we can save your assets. You don't have to write a blank check to the nursing home. Now, what we need is proper planning. Okay, so how do we go about that? Well, yesterday we talked about power of attorneys, a financial power of attorney and a medical power of attorney. And one of the important paragraphs in the financial power of attorney is to allow for planning and allow for unlimited gifting. So if you weren't on the call yesterday, if you do have a power of attorney, you should review it and make sure you have unlimited gifting. Don't have, sometimes, estate planning, attorneys limit the amount of gifting to $10,000 or $15,000 a month. Now, if you're trying to, we don't like the word hide, but reallocate that $170,000, and you're only allowed to gift away $15,000, it's not going to help you. We have to have unlimited gifting. So I can't reiterate that. So that's a key estate planning document. And then the other ones, is basically what we're trying to do is do what we call asset protection planning. And there's two types of asset protection planning that we sort of cover here. One is what we call a pre-crisis plan. This is when we're planning more than 5 years from now if we're going to go into the nursing home, because unless you have a crystal ball or a direct contact to someone a higher authority than me, we don't know what's going to happen to you in the future. It was like the other day there, I was driving down 270 and a truck pulled right in front of me. I wasn't, thank goodness, I have brakes that work. Otherwise, I might not be on this call with you today. So we never know what's going to happen. But for our pre-crisis planning, we're usually talking about setting up what we call irrevocable trusts, not a revocable trust. Remember, I told you that a revocable trust does not protect your assets, because if the easiest way to think about it is if you can get at your assets, so can the nursing home. So with a revocable trust, you can get at your assets. Therefore, the nursing home can get at them. With the irrevocable trust, you cannot get at your assets. Because if you think about the irrevocable trust as a little business, you're the owner of the business. You're the grantor. So you can move assets into that trust, be it your properties, monies, money markets, checking, savings, etc. We cannot put in IRAs or qualified monies. We're not allowed to do that. Well, you can, but then you're going to have to pay the taxes. And if you don't go into a nursing home, why are you spending taxes on that money? So depending on what's going to happen. So the whole idea of that irrevocable trust is that you're the owner of the trust. However, you're not the manager of the trust. You're not the trustee. That would have to be someone else. It can't be you, and it can't be your spouse. It can be kids. It can be anybody you want, but you cannot be the trustee. And technically, you're not the beneficiary of that money, okay? So someone else is the beneficiary. So once you place those assets into that irrevocable trust, you can't reach in there and get them. And if you can't get them, neither can the nursing home. The only caveat is that whenever you place an asset into that irrevocable trust, you have to get through the 5 years. Okay, so if we place your house in here in December 2021, come say January 2026, it would be protected from the nursing home. Now, obviously, if you have, a mid-stage dementia or, Parkinson's or, some serious ailments, you might not make it. So the irrevocable trust is not really going to, be advisable for you. But it just depends how much money, what properties you have, and how long you're going to be here. Now, the irrevocable trust, just like the revocable trust, avoids probate as well. So that's what we call our pre-crisis planning, okay? Now, our crisis planning is what happens if someone's in the nursing home today or going to be going into the nursing home. So if you look at that married couple or, even the single person, let's take about the single person. Usually if someone's going to go into the nursing home today, tomorrow, next week or whatever, and you're a single person, and let's say you have $200,000 worth of assets, we can usually save approximately about $50,000, 50% of those assets. So if you're going in there with 200,000, we can usually save about 50%, which is around about $100,000. Okay, so all I can say is you don't have to give it all to the nursing home. Okay. Now, if you are a married couple, let's just go back and look at this example that we had was the community spouse. Out of the $300,000, gets 130, and then the nursing home spouse out of the $300,000 gets 170,000. Now, if you don't do any planning, the nursing home is going to spend down your assets of 170,000 to below 2,500 bucks. 10 months at 17,000 or 17 months at 10,000, boom, it's gone. Then you'll qualify for Medicaid, and Medicaid will pay for your long-term care. Now, let me just tell you that the nursing home cannot discriminate between someone on Medicaid and someone on private pay. It's illegal to do that. You're going to get the same treatment, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent in the nursing home, okay? You can't have a nursing home split into two wings. There's the Medicaid wing and the private pay wing. And in the Medicaid wing, there's no one there. The lights are flickering. It's like a Stephen King movie. And when you go over to the private pay, there's hundreds of people, the lights on, everybody's having a party. I'm sort of making a joke about it, but I just want to get that across to you. Everybody gets the same treatment. Now, in our crisis plan, what we want to do is see this nursing home spend down of 170,000. We do not want to give that to the nursing home. We want to be able to give that to the community spouse. So that's our job, is to transfer that $170,000 not to the nursing home, not writing a $170,000 check to the nursing home. We want to write that $170,000 check to the community spouse. So that's where we come up with what we call our asset protection planning. We come up with an asset protection plan. How can we protect that $170,000 instead of giving it to the nursing home? Now, everybody is different. People say, well, how do you do this? Well, it depends on your circumstances. It depends on how much money you have, depends on when you come in. If you're doing this asset protection planning 5 years in advance, well, depending on what you have, maybe we'll set up a irrevocable trust. We can move your home or other property into that trust. Maybe depending on how much money and how much income that you have and how long you have to live, maybe we'll place some money into that irrevocable trust and keep the rest outside in a revocable trust because we want to avoid probate as well. So it just depends on what you have. But if you're sitting there with a home, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $600,000, you do not have to give all that money to the nursing home. Okay, I just want to reiterate that, because a lot of people think there's nothing that we can do. All I can say is that's a big myth. We can't give money away. Yes, we can. However, we have to plan for it. Okay. So the bottom line is, my goal is to help you and your loved ones protect your assets from the nursing home. Okay. We also, with the irrevocable and revocable trusts, as we talked about, is to avoid probate if you want to. Everybody doesn't have to avoid probate, but it's certainly a good idea, especially if you have children, minor children, or you've got autistic children or grandchildren, or you're just worried about, them being a spendthrift or whatever. And you can put in certain parameters, as we talked about yesterday. To honor your healthcare decisions, we do that through the healthcare power of attorney. And we want to try and maintain your quality of life and care. Now, let's say that you're a single person and you had that 100,000 or 200,000 and you spent it all on the nursing home. Now you get 84 bucks a month and you're sitting there with $1,000 because you've got to be below the $2,500. Now, what happens if you lose your glasses? What happens if you lose your teeth? What happens if you lose your hearing aid in the nursing home? Does Medicare cover that? No. Does Medicaid cover it? Basically, no. So what quality of life will you have if you're stuck in that nursing home without glasses, without hearing aids or whatever? So that's why we want to try and protect your assets for yourself. And also, it's not just for your family, it's for you, because if you have, say, out of that 200,000, you can keep 100,000. Then if you need new glasses, new teeth, new dentures, new hearing aids, you have that money. And, you know, now does $84 cover basic cable? Usually, you know, it's $100, so you can't even get basic cable. So maybe you could even get cable, you know, some in you know, to do all of that. So we want to try and maintain your quality of life if you're in the nursing home. And also, a lot of people want to protect the quality of life for their spouse. We see an awful lot of, usually it's typically women, it's not all the time, but in their 90s now, late 80s, 90s, and they've run out of money. And their health is starting to decline. Now, they've run out of money. They're not sick enough to go into the nursing home. So unless you're in the nursing home, Medicaid doesn't cover anything here in Maryland. Now, what happens if you want to bring a caregiver into your home or go to an assisted living facility and you have no money? How are you going to pay for that? That's, you know, that's a big issue today. We see a lot of women, you know, have spent all this money on the nursing home and their care and have got nothing left. Or you can create a legacy for your family. You know, who would you rather pay, the nursing home or your family? And one of the big things that we want to do is give you peace of mind. Because if you know you've got something planned, then, you know, you can relax and enjoy your remaining years. So now that you've been informed, you need to take the next step. We can request a consultation. We look forward to protecting your legacy together between our firm and you. And as I say, I try and keep this to 40 minutes. So I think I'm sort of 39 minutes, so I wasn't too bad. So thank you for listening. What I'm going to do is open this up to anybody if you've got any questions. I understand that some people don't want to, you know, talk in front of other people. If you want to have a private chat, just give us a call. But I'll open it up to see if MD has any questions.
David, I do have a question. This is Darcy.
Yes, hi, how are you doing?
Hi. I put it in the chat box, but I'll just ask it. In a non-irrevocable trust, are there rules that say that money cannot be spent on the person who opened it? In other words, how would you get your hearing aids, glasses taken care of if the money has gone into a trust that's not controlled by you?
Okay, so if you're talking about, I'm going to give $100,000 and put it into the irrevocable trust.
Right.
Right. Okay. Not the revocable trust, the irrevocable trust.
Right.
What I'm saying is, if we can get through that 5 years, there is little things that we can do. We'll have little trap doors. You know, when I said that you were not the beneficiary, however, the trustee has the power to go into that trust and take money out and give it to, you know, you, the owner of that trust. Okay. Now, the whole idea of that trust is that you take your money and you just put it in there and that's it. But there is ways, little, you know, trap doors that the trustee can go in there and take money out and, you know, buy hearing aids, big screen TVs, etc. for that person. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
What, David, what documents do we have to bring if we ask for a consult?
I mean, if you have existing power of attorneys or wills or trusts, just bring those in. I'll take a look at them. You know, like if you have existing power of attorneys and they're good, that's fine. I'm not going to change them, you know. But as we sort of talked about yesterday, if your power of attorneys are more than 5 years and they don't meet Maryland code, we definitely want to update them. If they don't have, you know, the gifting powers, you know, we definitely want to update them, you know, the power of attorneys. We talked about yesterday about the will, you know, whether it's I love you will or I love you but will, because I know that you were on yesterday. So it just depends. And then if you have a trust, then that's great. And then, you know, we just sit down. You know, what we do at this moment in time is that we could send you a questionnaire. You fill out the questionnaire. The first part is, you know, all about you. What name? Are you married? You get kids? Just what are your rough assets? I don't need PNC account number 596321 with $127.17. I've got a checking account, $100, IRA 50,000. It gives me an idea of what you have. Because then depending on what you have, you know, it might be different things that we can or cannot do. And then on the second, you know, part of the questionnaire is more like the estate planning, you know, who you would want as your power of attorneys, your personal representatives, how you want to distribute your estate. And then based on that, we'll have a meeting, you know, it used to be that everything was done over the phone, you know, a few months ago in the middle of, you know, COVID. I know COVID's still going on, but, you know, people are coming back into the office and you can come back into the office and we can discuss everything. And then based on, you know, what you want to do, we would quote you what we call a fixed fee. You know, we ought to do this, it's X number of dollars. And then if, you know, if you say yes, then we go ahead, draft up all the documents, and then we meet, go over all the documents, and if everything's acceptable, then we sign it. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, that was a long-winded answer to
Answered
your
my
question,
though.
Okay. Any other questions?
No, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Okay, well, it was nice to meet you. We'll sort of over the seminar and everything like that, webinar. And if I don't speak to you, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and be safe, everybody. Okay.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Take care, guys. Bye.
You too, David.